This video is about our typical response to some of our thoughts and feelings. Key, right? Some of the times, perhaps a lot of times it happens. We have certain thoughts, we have certain feelings, and then we are thinking, oh, I should not be having these thoughts. I should not be having these feelings. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about that. Let me first share a very personal incident, um, which sort of triggered me to create a video on this. I was thinking about some financial constraints, uh, and then I realized that one of my best friends is buying a new car, and then I was like, "Oh, why is he buying a new car?" You look at the response, right? Oh, I'm having these financial constraints and thinking of these financial constraints, and at the same time getting to know that, oh, this guy is buying a new car, and then his car is going to be bigger than mine. And then actually, I started thinking of all of my acquaintances and started thinking of the cars they own. And then when I realized that some of them actually have small cars or they don't even have a car, and I then felt a sense of relief that, okay, I'm fine. So this happens that one of our loved ones, one of our close ones, is doing really well in their careers or doing financially well. And then we get a sense of this, uh, I don't like this. Why is he doing so well? Right? We don't feel happy as much as we feel um, kind of bad or threatened or that something is being taken away from us. We have these feelings. I think I know that these feelings are not unique to me. Many of us, or possibly almost all of us, have these feelings. And then our typical response to such feelings is, oh, I should not be having these feelings. Why am I feeling bad if my friend is doing well? Or if my friend is buying a new car or new house or whatever? Right? So we get into this, I should not be feeling these things. I should not be having these thoughts. So let's look at I'm a teacher, so I'll take an example of a student-teacher interaction. So let's say I'm teaching a concept and the student asks a doubt, which is a very fundamental thing he's asking, something I'll take for granted. So the student asks this doubt, then I can say, oh, you should not be having these kinds of doubts now. I can say that. Some teachers do say that. I don't say that in my sessions, but I'm just taking an example. You should not be having these kinds of doubts. So why am I saying that? Because at this stage, what I am teaching him, the kind of doubt that the student is having is really very basic. Something I expected him to already be very clear about, right? So this is the reason I'm saying, oh, you should not be having these doubts. My point is, how does this response of mine help the student? He should not be having such a doubt, but he has the doubt, no? Right? Now, my saying that he should not be having that doubt just means that the student is not accepted. He's really disappointing me. That's all it conveys. That the student is engaging in some behavior that I consider not acceptable, right? That's why I'm saying, oh, you should not be doing this. You should not be having that doubt. So now I'm not resolving his doubt for sure. At the same time, I'm making him feel bad about even having the doubt in the first place. So it's a double whammy: non-resolution of the doubt and actually making you feel bad for having the doubt in the first place. Right? So, not a good job that I'm doing. Of course, the ideal thing, which may not be practical in all scenarios, but let's say the ideal thing could be that I actually sit with him and resolve his doubt. But this, let's say, may not be possible. Let's say in a classroom scenario where there are other students and I cannot really sit and stop for every single student out there. Even in this case, let's say when I cannot really sit down to resolve that student's doubt, I can at least acknowledge that, okay, this is the doubt you're having, but due to the practicalities of this of the situation that we are in, I may not be able to handle it. Possibly you can look for these materials online, or possibly we can meet outside the session, or you can figure it out on your own. Let's say using these texts or materials, or you can ask your friend. Basically, I can tell him that, okay, perhaps the due to the practicalities of the situation, I cannot handle the doubt right then and there, but I can guide him that, okay, these are the resources that you can use to handle to resolve your doubt. This is a much more helpful response. Not just that I'm guiding him on how he can resolve the doubt, but much more importantly, I'm not saying that he should not be having the doubt. So I'm not downcasting him. I'm not saying that this is unacceptable. Because if I say that asking doubts is unacceptable, or asking certain kinds of doubts is unacceptable, what's going to happen is that every time the student has some doubt, he'll end up constantly wondering whether this is an acceptable doubt or not. Right? Because the professor may again end up saying in the class that, oh, you should not be having these doubts. Okay, so what I'm trying to convey is that it is not helpful to say that you should not be having these doubts. The person has a doubt. Now I can help resolve that doubt, or I don't do that. But saying that that is not acceptable or should not be the case is not helpful. Actually, it's harmful. Similar is the case when we say that we should not be having these thoughts, we should not be having these feelings. Then, essentially, at some level, we are saying that we are engaging in something unacceptable. We are doing something bad. So, since we are doing something bad, the natural implication is that we are bad. So, this response is painful because essentially it's a form of self rejection. You're saying, oh, I'm bad. So, you are rejecting your own self. Right? If somebody rejects you, then still you may say, oh, that person is nonsense. I don't need to worry about his opinions. But right now, you are rejecting your own self, or we are rejecting our own selves. When we are saying to ourselves that, oh, I should not be thinking these thoughts, I should not be having these feelings. So, what is helpful is to accept that, okay, these are the feelings I have, right? You can draw the parallel with that student teacher interaction. So, what is helpful is to accept that this is where we are. These are the feelings that I'm having. And then to resolve those feelings. Now, how do we resolve those feelings or those doubts? So, what are the feelings? Let's talk about it. The feeling is that I'm feeling bad, as if something is being taken away when my friend is doing well. So, why do I feel so? No, right? Why do I feel so? There is no easy answer. Why I say there is no easy answer? Because we have never thought about the sources of our thoughts and emotions. Let me just tell you a basic framework that I have, which is that every emotion is associated with some thought. So if you're having some emotion, if you probe, there is some thought that is leading to that emotion. Now, this thought could be so subconscious or at a very deep level that you may not have conscious access to the thought. So you just have the feeling. You can feel the feeling, but you don't have access to the thought that is leading to the feeling. But the feeling tells you the nature of the thought. For example, oh, I don't feel good. I feel as if something is being taken away from me when my friend is doing well. What could be a possible thought? What could be a possible thought? So essentially, it is about asking these kinds of questions. So, for example, it could be that I measure my worth in terms of how I am doing financially relative to others around me. So if others around me start doing well, I'm not really doing work. I'm not really doing bad. I'm still doing the same as I was doing earlier. But if others are doing well, suddenly, relative to others, I'm not doing as well as I was doing earlier. So, because of this deep thought, these deep belief system or belief that my worth depends on how I'm doing financially relative to others, this is leading to these emotions that something is being taken away from me. What is being taken away? My worth is being taken away. How is my worth being taken away? Because now, relative to others, I'm not doing as well as I was doing earlier, right? I'm in a worse stage. It's not that I have become worse, it is that others have become better. So in a way, I've become worse. That is the way I measure my worth. So So now, and we can see its ramifications, its implications in other aspects of our lives also. For example, we have other relatives. For example, in my case, I shared the example that I looked at other acquaintances or friends I have, then I see, oh, these even don't even have a car. So I felt relief. Why? Because again, I was saying, oh, I'm much better than them financially. So I'm fine. So my worth depends on how I am doing financially with respect to others. That is a very deep thought. Since that thought is very deep and dominant, that is having a profound impact, significant impact on my emotions. Consciously, I may not agree with that. Okay, if you ask me, okay, do you really want to live like that? That you want to constantly measure your worth by how you are performing financially relative to others? I say definitely not. Okay, so it's not that I consciously agree with that thought, but that thought is still there within me, very deep seated. How has that thought sort of come at that stage that it's very deep seated? It's a very dominant part of me because of social structures, media, all the exposure that I've had since birth, perhaps because of my past lives. There could be a lot of reasons why a certain thought is very dominant and deep seated within me. But what I'm talking about it is right now is that that is a thought and that I have discovered, right? How did I discover? By looking at my feelings and then asking myself questions and perhaps looking at my behaviors and feelings in other situations and then seeing, oh, perhaps that is the case. Okay, of course, it is not just doing this, it is also being exposed to a lot of these ideas through books, right? There are a lot of great books about what goes within us, or the basic. way emotions work or how we live and all that, what are our belief systems and all that. So then you connect the pieces and then you arrive at, oh, okay. So my emotion is a consequence of this deep seated belief. Oh, but I don't want to have this belief. So now then what? It's not that you can push it away. Okay, then you may say, oh, I have this belief, I'm such a bad person and all that. Well, you can go down that route. Again, my point is, how will it help? I don't think it's going to help. For me, I know that I have that very deep seated belief in me. It really uh, brings up a lot of emotions within me. I still derive my worth on the basis of various external things, and not just external in terms of absolute, external in terms of relative, how visible is others. Consciously, it's not something that I want to really have within myself, but I have it within myself. So I cannot just wish it away. It is there. Then the other response, as I said, people have is, oh, I have it. It's really bad. I don't want it. I wish it is not there. That's fine. But we cannot wish it away. How do we, um, how does it go away? There could be several things. Uh, One is that even in terms of consciously, how largely are you in agreement that this is not the case, that a person's worth is not determined by how he or she is doing financially? A lot of people actually, what I see is pay lip service. They may just superficially agree to this idea that, yeah, of course. How can somebody's worth be tied to their financial achievements? But that's how they live day in, day out. Not just in terms of evaluating their own worth, but they evaluate other people's worth also on the basis of how they're doing financially or career wise or professionally. So, in my understanding, the way to change subconscious is first to be very clear consciously. A lot of ideas we are not even clear consciously. We may sort of again superficially agree, yeah, this is how it should be. But there is not enough even conscious agreement, let alone uh, a scope of making subconscious changes. So if I become consciously extremely clear that this is how I want to live, I don't want to measure my worth, or I don't believe that anybody's worth can be measured by his or her financial standing, then over a period of time the subconscious will change. Why do I believe so? Because this is how I think our subconscious is built. It has built through repetition of certain ideas, right? We have been exposed to the same ideas in different forms and shapes throughout our lives. That's how it has become our subconscious belief system, right? So it is through repetition it has built, and it is through repetition of the opposite ideas that this will dismantle and something else will come in its place. But circling back to that main topic that I was talking about, that saying that I should not be having these thoughts, I should not be having these feelings, is not a helpful response. It 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 actually worsens the situation by essentially calling yourself bad, right? When you say I should not be having these things, but you know you're having these thoughts and feelings, then you're saying, oh, then I'm bad. This is not helpful. What is helpful is that you accept it. There are a lot of thoughts and feelings, good and bad, within you. Can you really accept yourself for who you are, that you are this mixture? And now, if you want to change certain parts of you, you may strive for that. And the uh, way to not have these feelings or thoughts is to really go back to the source of these feelings and thoughts and address that, as I shared with you in this video. I think That's a helpful response to accept where we stand currently and then strive towards resolution of our problems or work gradually and compassionately towards changing certain parts of us that we believe could be better rather than criticizing ourselves and calling ourselves bad for having those parts in the first place. Thank you.